The clinical review process is a compliance feature in ACE that can be turned on or off for each individual clinical user. The purpose of the review process is to allow the practice to provide guidance and oversight to newer clinicians until a level of clinical and clinical documentation proficiency is demonstrated. New clinicians can be those that are new to the practice, new to the setting, or new to ACE. The review process is a source of comfort for newer ACE users and newer clinicians to ensure that their documentation is a professional and thorough representation of the work and services provided. When the review process is required for a clinical user, all evaluation and plan of care documentation will receive a supervisory clinical review prior to attestation and signing of the document. When a clinical user is not required to submit documentation for clinical review, they still have the option of submitting specific documentation for review when a second clinical opinion would be appropriate and appreciated. This video will provide instructions for the user after the documentation has been submitted by the clinical user for review. Back on the mothership or the admin portal of ACE, supervisory clinical staff will receive an inbox message allowing them to review evaluations and plan of care documents as they are submitted by clinical staff. The clinical reviewer will peruse the document for compliance and the degree to which the document provides a thorough narrative of the patient's status and the nature of the service provided. If oversights, errors, or thoughts for consideration are noticed, the reviewer will document the findings in a written text format and return these notes associated with the document back to the clinical user via an inbox message for consideration, further discussion, or editing needed. When the clinical reviewer returns the findings to the clinician, the reviewer may choose to allow the user to sign the document, or may request that the document return to the reviewer for additional review once changes have been made. Following a successful sync, the clinical user will receive the ACE inbox message that a review of the documentation has been completed. The user will tap on the Evaluation Review Complete message. The inbox message will contain an attachment that is a link to the reviewed document and a message from the clinical reviewer. Often the message received is, "Great job, sign the document." This message will also indicate if the clinical reviewer is allowing the user to sign the document after reviewing and editing, or if additional review is needed for the document. Oftentimes, in a difficult clinical case, a second review may be necessary. Your inbox message will let you know how to proceed, so read it carefully. In order to view the document and the notations made by the clinical reviewer, the user simply needs to tap on the document attachment. Tapping on the evaluation document attachment will automatically navigate the user to the calendar form on the evaluation. You will note in the top right corner there is a new button that did not appear previously when the user was entering their evaluation data. The button is entitled Review Notes. This button appears on each form in a reviewed document. By tapping on the button, the user may view the clinical reviewer's notes and considerations for the entire document. In this particular example, the reviewer noted that the patient was recently diagnosed with autism and that there was no mention of previous speech therapy in the evaluation. The reviewer noted that it would be important to note in the case history section whether the patient had received therapy in the past. As you can see, the Review Notes button is present on all forms of the documentation, and all of the notes related to the document are noted in that location. If the clinical user feels that it is clinically appropriate to add, modify, or remove information from the document, they will simply use the document navigation drop-down box at the bottom of the form to go to the appropriate place in the document. In the case of our example, the additions noted by the reviewer should be made in the case history section of the document. Thus, the clinical user navigates to the case history form, makes any changes, and taps Continue to save the work. If the user has been asked to submit the document for additional review, the user will utilize the drop-down box to navigate to the Evaluation Complete form and press the button to submit the document for review. The user will not have the option to attest and sign. If the user has been allowed to sign the document, the user will utilize the drop-down box to scroll to the Attest and Sign form. Scroll down to the last option in the drop-down list and tap Attest and Sign. Tap the green Yes, Sign Evaluation button and the password box will appear. Enter the password and sign the evaluation by clicking the Sign Evaluation button. ACE will provide the user with a confirmation message that the document has been signed and filed in the EMR. The action of signing the evaluation will automatically delete the review inbox message for the evaluation. In the event that the clinical reviewer requested for the user to return the document for additional review, then it would return to the reviewer after a successful sync, and the review process would repeat. Ultimately, in the end, complete and professional clinical documentation in the EMR is our goal. Now it's time to complete the same process for the recently reviewed plan of care. Tap on the inbox message. The message will contain an attachment that is a link to the documented plan of care forms and a message from the clinical reviewer. The user will click on the attachment. When the plan of care forms open, notice the Delete Plan of Care button at the top of the form. This button will delete the plan of care when necessary. For example, if a diagnosis was changed on the patient's evaluation that this plan of care document was built from, the user would click the Delete Plan of Care button and start a new plan of care that would utilize the correct diagnosis for the patient. The Review Notes button is present on all plan of care forms. After reading and/or responding to the reviewer notes, the clinical user will attest and sign the document using the drop-down box to scroll to the Attest and Sign form. Tap the Yes, Sign Plan of Care button and the password box will appear. Enter the password to sign the plan of care and tap Sign. ACE will provide you with a confirmation message that the document has been signed and filed in the EMR. Again, a thorough and professional plan of care for each patient is our goal. The action of signing this plan of care will also automatically delete the inbox message regarding the reviewed document. If you are waiting on reviewed documentation to be returned to you, it is always a good idea to sync your device to ensure that all documents have been shared with the ACE mothership and are returned to you successfully. Another helpful tool is the Documents Out for Review report in ACE. This report allows the user to see what documentation is waiting for clinical review. Use the main menu at the top of the form to navigate to the Report section of the program. Next, tap the report Documents Out for Review, and then tap the Run Report button. The Documents Out for Review report shows the patient name, the type of documentation in review, and the date it was submitted. Contact your supervisor if you have a question about the review process. This concludes the clinical review process of ACE. For further information, feel free to watch the video again and pause as necessary. Additionally, you may consult the written Clinical ACE manual for detailed instructions and screenshots related to specific features and tasks.